The views expressed in the following show are of the host, the guest, and the callers. The content of the following show, its accuracy, authenticity, and the ramifications of the use or application of said content is the responsibility of those speaking and listening, not the broadcast medium. Richard Allen Miller is a pioneer in the annals of metaphysics and paranormal exploration. Explanation? That's an exploration, to which he is pretty good at. Miller began working in the X-Files, in a world of Navy Intel, the SEALs Corp, then it was called the MRU. In the late 60s, his public collaborations and research continues. An original Black Ops team member, Miller's researches in the field of paranormal began as a graduate physics, working 11 years with Navy Intel, Anesthesiology. So he knows how to work on the sensory of the brain. During this period, numerous foundational papers, including a Holographic Concept of Reality, Embryonic Holography, were written. I'm glad I don't have to read for a living, huh? His past and current writings and presentations reveal a depth of knowledge and practical experience in three major fields: alternative, agriculture, New Age physics, and metaphysics. Miller now writes for Nexus Magazine and is a preferred guest on internet radio. He is re-emerging at a critical time in humanity's evolution where metaphysics and practical survival converge. Richard Allen Miller, one L in richardalanmiller.com. His books can be found through oak-publishing.com. Also, I got a link on the webpage that takes us to the last video interview that we have done. We're doing it again this time, so that look for this to be up probably in a week or so. We'll have it up live on YouTube. And let me welcome back to Feet to the Fire, Richard Allen Miller. Welcome back.
Thank you. I'd like to, what is that movie? When Bob met Alice or something like that, she reached over and she said, "I want to eat what she's eating." I want to smoke what you're smoking, man. You know, that was a great movie, and that's just exactly where you were trying to introduce me. I wished I was there. You know, my mind fuzzy and not really caring. I'm just for the ride.
Well, I mean, my problem is I'm not a good reader. I mean, I got dyslexia or whatever. So
I got it. It's a dyslexic thing. It actually right to left brain, and you have this bottleneck.
Oh, is that what it is? So maybe if I take a drill and just kind of drill through there and make a hole.
There was a comic that came out after Yellow Dog comics. You remember Yellow Dog and Zap? Then there was another one called Mother's Oats. And Mother's Oats talked about how a thought originates in the brain and all the train wrecks that it goes through before it comes out of the mouth. It was a really good comic.
Yeah, it is. I just saw it. You got to send me a message. What is it now? You've been telling people that this is the 11th hour. You must go tell people this is the hour.
I posted that. That's on Facebook. That is a message from the Hopi elders. You have been talking... let's see, I'll read it to you. Here we go. You have been telling the people that this is the 11th hour. Now you must go back and tell the people that this is the hour. Here are things which must be considered. And he runs it down on what's important and what isn't. And that's the whole thing about distraction. We're constantly distracted from what is truly important. I would say, aside from your alternative radio, like what you're doing, general news reporting on the networks is worse than Nazi Germany during the war. And so, with that said, this is it. And this is as good as it gets. Unfortunately, we're mostly disinformation too. In fact, information is no longer about the truth. That's what this OP message is about. Information is now a weapon of war. And I don't know how to explain other than everybody's truth is found within yourself, And what you have to do is learn how to listen. And once you do, it's different for each of us. We're not necessarily going to have the same values. And as such, we're all in fourth grade, and that's God's will, not seeing the bigger picture. But we all know what we're supposed to be doing. Why aren't we doing it? And so this Hopi elder runs it down. He says, where are you living? What are you doing? What are your relationships? Are you in the right relationship? Where is your water? You know, if the grid goes down, for example, this man is saying water will become the first headache for everybody. And so just in towards sovereignty, the idea of being independent and within, you know, self-contained in your spirit would mean that you would have at least 3 days of water for every single person in your household, including animals. Do you? And where would you get your next water if the grid stayed down for a couple of extra days because they couldn't get the part in? Ha! You know, basic. People aren't thinking about what's really, really important. They're worried about rent. Money isn't real. What's real is your labor. That's real. You know, that when you do something, that has meaning, that has value. Money is kind of like a theatrical prop. It's like this petrodollar is doomed. And Bitcoin and all the rest of these gambling around things that are going on are not really what it's about. What it's about is, you know,
I put it as your attention, your creative attention is kind of how I look at it. That's what they want. They want to harness your creative attention. Yeah. So,
yeah, to be distracted. Yeah.
Excuse me. I had an interview with a guy last week. His name was Andre Hodge, and he mentioned a term that said money is like the human force is converted into a unit that can be used. You know, so like instead of before they would get you to be a slave to, for example, harvest crops or something, and that was the point was to get the crops harvested. Well, with money, you can take people and it's like a human battery. It stores that labor that you can then take and use somewhere else and transfer it. So you can, if you have a lot of extra labor than you need here, you can end up having them do work, store it in the money, and then go over here and buy what you need over there. So it works out great for those who are the masters.
Here's the deal on that. Yeah, here's the deal on that. Things are sold either as storable or non-storable commodities. And non-storable commodities are those that are used up each year, and you have shortages and surpluses. And the shortages and surpluses are what cause the prices to go up or down. And marketing has the ability of either doing what the market will bear or fair wage markup. Now, in labor, when you do it in terms of labor hour for hour, the University of, where is it, in Ithaca, Cornell, has a worksheet now that they offer their graduate students that teach a course in graduate level workshop. They give them so many credits, and you can spend that in town now for food, lodging, or utilities. That's where we're going. That's where it's going to be, and it's going to be more localized. Barter, trade, that's what zeitgeist moving forward was all about. We've had 400 years of currency. It doesn't work. It's time to move forward.
Right. Now, you know what? I have a problem with zeitgeist. I mean, I think that some had suggested that I may have been either Socrates in another life or been around him because I seem to be...
That's the Hemlock guy, right?
Yeah. His logic was people would come up with, present their thing, and then he would poke holes in it. So eventually they got so mad at him for poking holes and not, they said, well, then what's the answer? He says, well, I don't know the answer. Well, they didn't believe him. They thought he knew the answer was holding it because he can poke holes in their theory, so they ended up, killing him. But, well, he willingly took the Hemlock. But the problem I have with, when I saw Zeitgeist, I mean, the first part was great. The problem I had is with the third part about Christ, just because he was repackaged in this Savior mode does not mean the original Christ and his message, Jesus and his message, had merit. So that part was bad. But here's
that in the original Zeitgeist, the first one, that was so wonderful when George Carlin said, God has everything, but he needs more money.
So it's the church, and the repackaging of Jesus is the problem. But my original point, though, is that when I saw the solution, I liked it, except one thing. The people would then become even more a slave to the system because the computers would make everything. They generate the power. All this stuff's going on. Now I can do whatever I want. I can create stuff. I can do. But if I needed to survive, I would be even more disabled.
That's Kurzweil. That's where we're going with the Avatar program. The idea of humans need not apply.
Yeah.
Where we don't need humans anymore. They're just in the way.
Yeah. So,
have you seen that video?
No, I haven't.
Humans?
No.
I'm going to upload you a video called Humans Need Not Apply. And it runs it down chapter and verse. I'll get that link for you while we're...
Great.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's the problem with all the answers is they still have a central figure, a central system, and the system is not controlled by the people. Because in there they say, who runs the system? Well, there's going to be these people who will run the system. They'll be in charge. And, well, those, I think it was 7%, will run the system. It's what they're doing is offering more goodies and toys for us to be slaves rather than the current model, which is just driving us into the ground to be slaves. And so I'm a little skitoffish about their solution, though. Again, their first video, right on with the federal dollar and all this stuff. I mean, it's right in. And I just hope that people start to hear this stuff, because when people start to hear what Obama talking now, they just don't get it. They don't like them. I mean, they don't like any of them now. And I'm hoping they can get that.
The key is empowerment. That's the key word that I want to always try to keep in the foreground, is that is an opportunity for something to become something better. That is this crisis that we're facing. This is the hour. This is the moment. This is the moment that you're supposed to actually now get up off the couch and do something literal.
Right.
What is it? What would it be for you, James? You're radio, probably. You're trying to spread the truth from your perspective of interview.
Actually, I was going to talk to you about this. This is a more of a conversation between me and you as opposed to some big fancy interview.
But it's an important one, probably.
I got contacted by a guy who was contacted by a person who's an editor. He's a technical editor by trade, and on his side, he gets into projects, and he is talking to me about doing a book. And so I sat down. I've dropped out of college writing. Okay, so I'm not a writer. So I sat down and took his technical advice, and I got an outline, and it's like looking pretty good. So I sent it back to him, and he's wants me to do this and that and the other thing. So we're going to work together in the next month, probably, put together a book. I've never written before. Just boom, opportunities there. I walked through the door. Boom, boom, boom. He's a great guy. Pardon me.
That's very cool.
So I see the.
You should pursue this. I can sense in you.
Because what I'm offering. Here's the reason why I started out was hesitant about any of this. I am putting together now videos, commentaries. I'm calling the series "Resonating with Reality," and I already got the domain, which was available. So my whole point is that people come from certain perspectives, and they're caged in those perspectives. I was fundamental Christian, right? I was caged in this perspective, but my pursuit of truth, wanting truth, honestly, not some pie in the sky, I'm for truth. I mean, I want to know truth, because reality, I know truth and reality, you don't get hit in the head if you resonate with reality. Reality is your friend. You work with it and so on. So I wanted to find truth, and I learned a bunch of stuff, and so I want to share it. That's about all. And I'm thinking, like, who wants to know this? I'm not fancy. I'm not a doctor. I'm not fancy this. I'm just some guy, a truck driver, So I started doing it, and I got emails all over the place from people. Hey, that's great when you interject the spiritual stuff in there, So I think the time is ready. I'll just share it and let it be, you know.
Spirituality is not what you do, but how you do it. The quality, personal pursuit. Enjoy that ride. That's where you're going to find enlightenment. Truly.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you walk down a hall, you have lots of different ways you can walk down that hall. You can ricochet down and fight your way, or you can flow and let the mountain come to you. And what you're suggesting is more of what's called the flow, where it is, you know, the universe wants you to do what it, you know, what you're doing. It cooperates.
Right now, the universe is not cooperating with the video feed here. Oops.
There we are. We're back.
Okay.
How did that work?
I don't know. The video got stopped. If you can restart it again. I'll say the universe is not cooperating with the video.
Imagine that. You know, I told you that I was hacked. I was hacked actually in my home, where they physically came in the first time and disconnected my whisper drive and wiped it. They went into my computer and separated my two drives, and, you know, my whisper drive, my backup drive, and they wiped it. Then a second time they came into my tape backup, the removable drive, and they wiped that one. And I had all 10 books ready for press on it. However, it set me back a little bit.
I would say so. 10 books.
But it turns out, like Dr. Lenny Time had a copy of the book that he did, the Marshall Papers. That was one of the books. Bob Marshall was the idiot savant that worked for Buckminster Fuller that did the vector equilibrium matrix and the concept of the buckyball. And nobody could understand Bob Marshall because he was like an idiot savant. He lived out of, I don't know, down in Fort Bragg, California. And they hired my ex-wife Iona and me. Iona, by the way, was the one that introduced me to you a long time ago. I don't know if you remember that.
No, I don't remember talking with her.
Yeah.
Wait, you know what I do now? I know. Wasn't she in, like, Publicist or something like that?
Long time. She's CIA.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, wait a minute. Let me ask you. I mean, once CIA, always CIA. Isn't that kind of the deal?
No. I'm still Navy intelligence, but I'm retired, and I actually do now what I feel like doing, not what I'm asked to do, and pretty much given free rein, because what I want to do is usually the right thing to do. I have an instinct. And so I've been talking about these new weapons. I don't know why we got hacked. I think it's probably on my work with structured water. I'm guessing I have infringed on someone's new patent.
Oh.
I'm guessing. I don't know.
Well, I mean, all right. Well, I mean, rather than poke around that, speaking of structured water, now let me. Here's what I'm working under, and you can add to it a millionfold. The water is evaporated into the air, so therefore it's distilled. All right, comes out of the sky. Now, granted, it gets polluted on the way down, but let's leave that out for a minute. As it comes down through the sky, it's traveling through magnetic fields. And from what I can gather, it kind of comes out in swirls. So you have kind of a toroid kind of approach. Yeah, coming down. And so that's where the water gets structured naturally, let's call it. And if you buy distilled water in a store, it's not structured. Therefore, your body kind of structures it, if you will. It ends up being kind of it's pure, but it's also hard for your body. So it should be structured. And I have a device, and there are a couple out there that structure the water. Now, is this woo-woo stuff, or does this make sense?
All of the above. Yes. Okay, let's start with a concept that water is basically a molecule H2O. That's what we've defined as water. However, there is deuterium and tritium, which are isotopes. And so now there's a different kind of an H2O. Then there's an H709, three water molecules clustered with a free radical ion. We'll call him Willard water. There you go. And a Carey-Reams water. Different kinds of waters in the different structures of it. Now, the one that they're talking on the fourth phase of water today is H3O2. That's where you take a hydrogen peroxide molecule, and you bring in a third hydrogen molecule, and it so bends the structure, it creates a type of electromagnetic field resonant oscillator. And what that does is forms against H709 with a free radical ion, and all of a sudden you have an exclusion zone, EZ zone, or EZ boundary, that's very reminiscent of solid state physics. And what we have is forbidden zones in quantum mechanics. Only water is 6 orders of magnitude more precise, smaller, more information, better register, probably our computer of the future. Gallium arsenide now is the ones we do forbidden zones, and we have a check register in the lattice relationship of the one metal to the other. When you deal with structured water, it has what they call memory, which is basically the way you would see it physically in a relationship is its way of wanting to go into a surface with surface tension. And the surface tension might try to climb right up that bottle if it was tellurium, as opposed to plastic where there's no surface tension at all, essentially. It has to do with light, electrostatic fields, and all kinds of, shake, rattle, and roll molecules in there. Now, basically, the structuring of the water can be done with thought. And that is where we're getting into holy water, like the church. It kills vampires and werewolves. And so a blessing of water, there is a group of scientists that are actually doing what they call the intentionality experiment, where they're actually physically measuring changes in the structure of the water just with thought. How does that work? People have theories. Roger Penrose, the one I'm going to feel his sense is what's being developed at MIT called cavitation. Now, what is cavitation? You have a pool of water, and you have a drop of water, a solid drop of water that hits the pool, and it creates rings going out of wavelength. Also, it pushes them in, and the waves also go inward, and they slap and form a ball of air with water around it called cavitation. We see this with submarines going through the water, and there's a bunch of balls of air going behind it. The dolphin first started doing this when they blew microwave, sonar level bubbles they would play with them. They were a form of cold fusion, and it was called sonoluminescence. And MIT wanted to know how that worked. And what they did next is discovered a type of cold fusion. Now, what's actually happening in this ball of air with water around it, it comes on, hits it again, and another one comes up in a little lever, and then, and it peters out. The air inside the ball or field of water that's structuring it is going into itself as a torus. And it is a type of mini black hole. It's not to be distinguished as a black and white hole. It's more about a torus twistor space. That's the difference between quantum mechanics and Roger Penrose and his geometric universe and the math that's used on that. And what he's suggesting is that space itself is a series of mini black holes curving in on itself, creating the possibilities of potential. And that how you get timelines and things of that nature that would expand outward into a time-dilated balloon, if you will, in string theory, it has to do with thought. And imagination is reality. And that is what we're now moving toward in our understandings of nanotechnology, information transfer, and genome expression. Those are the areas of explosion.
If I could backtrack for a second, you said something that really caught my interest. Well, that's to say everything you say, but
you were being patient then.
Right. But now you mentioned about this air and so forth. I had a guy on a long time ago who was the inventor of Penta water, and he talked about what inspired him. It was kind of he was on the beach and he was watching waves hitting the ocean, the ground. And it would make this loud crash, and he would notice all these bubbles. And I don't know, I can't remember the story too well. I don't know if it dawned on him or if he had physics in the background and that's connected, but the water hits the ground and the force creates a plasma. That actual bubbles is a 1,000,000-degree plasma, whatever, from the force of it hitting the ground, and that's what the bubbles are. And that's structuring the water. So he reproduced this in his lab by taking very high volume sound and resonating in the tanks. In fact, they do it overnight because it's so loud. People go home and they do it overnight and come back and sell the water. And he tested the water, and the molecule was about 5 molecules together, where water normally forms larger chains.
Type of clustering. You can measure that. The way they're doing that, that's Rustam Roy's work at Penn State. He's using what they call Raman spectrophotometry. My work, when I was in grad school, I worked mostly with UV spectrophotometry, ultraviolet, UV, long ultraviolet. We would blow something up, burn it, and then look at the spectral lines on it in the UV range. What Raman spectrophotometry is a different waveband that they're looking at, and they're looking at shades of changes in it to see if the water is H3O2, for example, as opposed to H2O, or your clustered water of H709 with a free radical ion. And the water is so small as a molecule that it layers and layers and layers and layers and layers, and predicated on what kind of foreign surface it goes up to, presuming it's pure water, because if it's different kinds of water, and there are places in the ocean where there's higher ranges of deuterium, it will structure differently. And it sets up a relationship of how it attaches it or surrounds a foreign object, whether it's bicarbonate of soda, a salt like sodium chloride, or any other impurity that might be considered you in your body. You're less than 10% human, and your body itself is 79% water, and that water is in 99% of your body, which means that you're basically a habitat with structured water defining you as a unique universe because of the impurities. How's that one feel? As a metaphor. No, really, you're like a universe that's quite different. And if you want to get into cold fusion in the body and ATP, I'll be glad to talk to you about it because it's a quark gluon plasma. The thing is, it's the way the water relates to a foreign object, and that's what they call memory. And the exclusion zone is this H3O2, and the way it butts up against in the first layering of the water and the way the water approaches a foreign object. And it sets up a register very similar to that in a computer. The thing is, it's 6 orders of magnitude more information, which means it could be the entire you in that drop of water. That is why they're calling water it's life. It's the basic form of life. It's where God appears. That's what Leclerc at MIT is suggesting. It's how God appears in the physical plane. It's as water. Interesting stuff, huh?
Yeah.
Let me give you a really nice paper here. I was going to do this and I forgot to do it, and I got sidetracked. I'm going to send you out of desktop, out of my... this is all stuff that got hacked. I'm now starting to reproduce all of it. Check... let's say...
well, while you're doing that...
yes, I'm looking...
when I talk about the structured water, I'm not necessarily trying to program it to do anything in as much as be absorbed well. I mean, is there a way that these people are talking about things so that the water will be received by your body well? Just simply...
Yeah, there are techniques you can do. You can start with pH. It's got to go into structured water. That's why I wasn't finding. I am. Here we go. And water is life. Chuck. That is done by a botanist friend of mine. He's been putting together. Is that sending?
Yeah, I got to download it here.
There it is. Good.
Yeah, I'm
good.
trying to not put it on the screen because I got you on the screen, and so now.
There it is.
Yeah.
It just came going. Okay, water is life, and that is possibly one of the best compendiums on the nature of structured water, and it starts off with Hank Williams. I'm dying on water.
See, I'm doing it. I'm trying to get it out of the way of your screen. There we go. Okay. All right.
That's for Sharon. That's for the universe.
Okay, good. I'll when we talk about things, when I put this up, I'll link to all these things. I'll put them up on my server.
So now, Euler's equation is the math that I'm using right now for supercavitation, and what cavitation is that drop of water that then hits the water, forms a shock wave of vibrations that creates a ball that surrounds the air, traps it, goes up, comes back down, hits, and you have another one, and a little one, boom, 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 and it drops out. Now, that's cavitation. Supercavitation is when you can hit it with a laser beam and then cause it to explode as a new thermal bomb, as a new Star Wars weapon. Want to go there next?
No. It figures there's always going to be a weapon to come out of all this stuff.
Well, that's because, like nuclear energy, before it was used in health, it was used as a weapon. Get a grip.
Right.
And that's the way it is with all discovery.
Yeah.
It will be first used as a weapon before other possible applications. One of them, which we'll talk about when you'd like, is fullerenes, where you can give rats lethal doses of radiation, feed them fullerene water, and 95% of them survive. It is a super antioxidant that I'm writing about now, where they structure carbon into a buckyball and put water inside it that structures it into a machine. Pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, it is. And I see, but now I'm hoping this stuff. What is that?
This is my back scratcher. I had that from graduate school.
Now we've already blown through the first break, but I don't want to stop now because we got only 20 minutes to the next one. So sure. I'll let that go to the top. But what my point on the water is, here's something that's happened to me myself. Is I had blood tests a couple years back. I had some creatinine in the urine and other things that started to lead people to think there's kidney troubles. So what I decided to do was holistically go ahead and look at this stuff. Herbally and holistically. I did Hulda Clark's kidney cleanse. I started drinking this distilled water that's structured, pure. I did several things, and I've added. I did the cordyceps, which we want to talk about, and in my latest test, I went back there, and it's all normal now. My blood pressure went from about 10 points high to normal.
Good for you.
And I'm looking at it going, well, the only thing I can think of is the staying away from GMOs, mostly organic, drinking a lot of pure water, and then these supplements. I mean, what else did I do? I didn't lose weight yet. That's my next project. But what else could have been, And I think the water had a lot to do with the flushing out the kidneys,
That's a good place to start. Actually, your choice of waters is probably an order of magnitude more important than your choice in foods. And the pH is the first place you start. Basically, neutral water is at 7.0. Most water that is in soda or in a metal can, carbonated, is at least 6.8 to 6.4. And your body cannot digest foods unless it gets it from bone marrow, which is usually at 8.4 pH. That's the most optimum pH you want your water. You can do that by adding a very small impurity, baking soda, into the water, and it will immediately, because of the structuring of the water, change the pH. That's the first place you start. You can do that with ultraviolet. You can do that with microwaves. There's a variety of different ways you can hammer, shake, rattle, and rock and roll on changing your water. Light is the bottom line. That's called cavitation. When that photon comes in and hits that water, it creates a cavitation ball, and that's where your vortexes are. That's the whole principle of the way photosynthesis works. It has to do with light and the structuring of water from the light beam that hits it. And so when you have your metal as opposed to plastic, what the plastic is doing in your glass water bottles is damaging the water because of filtering certain light beams out that don't get actually hit the water. And that's why there's no surface tension and your pH drops down to about 6.8, 6.4. And what you're really trying to do is get a higher pH somewhere around 8.4, where your body doesn't have to send it to the urine, it can actually use it. So, it's a simple thing to do. You can do it by holding a pH in your mouth, a pH litmus paper. Test your pH on your body. You want to be alkaline.
Right. I understand that, but I thought when it goes into your stomach, it could become, it deals with stomach acid. Therefore.
Well, that's why the stomach is separated and held in stasis with valves and locks down, so you don't get that shit back into the rest of your body.
So when it leaves the stomach, it's now changed in pH back higher again.
That's correct. It's dropped it way down. Your acids are gone, broken down into sugars and things of that nature.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So when you drink the water, you want to drink it on an empty stomach then?
I would be drinking water all the time. I'm going to say that because of the new Star Wars weapons geoengineering, that right now everybody is micro-dehydrated, and that will be the thing that kills most people, not drinking enough water. That is, anytime there's been a hurricane or a natural event, the two things that kill people are exhaustion and dehydration. And right now, everybody, because of the geoengineering and this polymer that's in the air, is micro-dehydrated. That means the amount of water that you're drinking, you actually right now probably need to drink about 1/3 more.
Wow.
Just for balance.
Now, I did buy some, you said sodium baking soda.
Well, bicarbonate. What do you mean?
I bought some potassium bicarbonate because...
potassium is different than sodium, yeah.
Yeah, it is, because I drank it. It was like, whoa. I mean, it tastes not good.
No. Potassium and sodium are kind of like different electrolytes in your body. Sodium and potassium electrolytes.
Yeah, but it was marketed as being a better approach than sodium bicarbonate based on the sodium.
Well, everybody, let the buyer beware. That's what I would say. And, everybody's got opinions on how that all works. It's baking soda that I used to do because it's so cheap, so easy, and it works so well. Just a small pinch in a large amount of water.
Okay, well, that's what I'm asking. I'm asking the doctor, so we can find out what because people try to do the right things, but then they stumble on the little technical things that really make a big difference. And so that's why I'm wondering.
Okay. The bottom line is when you microwave water, you're destructuring it from the inside out. That means that anything that has gone through a microwave is going to have bad water in it. Right out of the gate. So that's one of the reasons why you don't want to use a microwave whenever possible, because you are destructuring the water, which means that water that you're getting isn't any good.
All right. Now, I've heard this before where a lady who was a listener mentioned her neighbor is a scientist, and he had mentioned he would never, ever have microwaves because how it cooks. And I said, wait a minute. I mean, when you heat something on the stove, you're still heating up the molecules and whatnot. Okay. But now I understand. Now I understand a little bit.
Yeah, well, microwave heats it from the inside out. It's more efficient than heating it from the outside in where it bubbles and you have your water boiling and rolling. And so that is also destructuring the water, but to not nearly the extent from the outside in, and is a good argument for eating raw.
All right, so best.
That's a good argument for why you want to think about possibly eating raw.
So raw best, stovetop next, and then microwave.
Well, I wouldn't use a microwave at all, even when you're in a hurry, It's not going to make your bowel and other things work in a hurry. It's not going to be efficient. It's going to slow you down.
Okay.
You think you're speeding up from a microwave, you're going to get it back somewhere else on the toilet or something. The way it moves through it.
Right.
You know, you're not going to get the speed you think that it is, like with pizza or some weird thing.
Right, you have a tendency here to stop talking when I go to do something. So
I get curious. Your office is so very cool.
Yeah, I tried to, I got to go look at where the commercials are, and I'm looking up the email to find out what I even talked to you about, what I wanted to talk about, well,
James, you're smart, and you have probably some serious questions that I haven't ever been asked. So just feel free to open up what you want to know, because probably what you want to know is pretty much what your demographics, your people.
Well, actually, I appreciate that, but I that's why I appreciated Art Bell's, because when I would drive along in my truck and listen to him, he would ask the question in my head, which let's say other people don't. So I appreciate that, because I like your perspective. You have the physics, and you have both the structured mind and the open mind. And one of my favorite books is the Zen and Motorcycle Maintenance. One of my favorite books. I read that, but my mind just exploded open. And one of the things he mentions in that and the next book, which is Lila, is that all these breakthroughs come from the edge of almost the edge of insanity. Because you have your rationality, and then you have the unrationality or irrationality, and all the breakthroughs are like right outside. But if you go too far out, you get lost, So to be able to go out to that edge and feel around and bring it in, and I look at you as one of those people that have the scientific mind looking out where most scientific minds are stuck, like boom, in the irrational, And you can kind of sneak out there, and then you bring this information back, and you run it through your mind.
I write about voice of reason and voice of coyote. Inside and outside the box, I actually write about that. It turns out it's the same voice. And everybody just needs to listen to their own selves more. Once they've done that, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like you really know what you're supposed to be doing. You just kind of lazy and decide you're going to do it another lifetime or something.
Yeah, well, I myself don't look at the lifetimes, because I find it to be destructive. It's not like I'm under pressure to do it all now.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, I think, become acquiescent when it's the idea of multiple life. Well, why try so hard? I'm going to have to go do it again and again, and that's not the case. I think right now, where we're at, especially right now, you can get so much accomplished right now that even 100 years ago you couldn't have done, let alone 1,000 or multiple lives. It's like a lot of people are going to kick themselves in the behind when they look back and see how much can be done now. So that's. I mean, I got so many things going on. I don't have enough time, the only reason why I'm not crazy at this moment is that I have to let the flow of me going through life guide me, because I can't do it. I can't.
Well, there you had the right word, flow. When you, like the Buddha, let the mountain come to him, where you allow the world to present what it wants from you. That's how it works. The moment.
Because one of the things I'm thinking about now, and I'm hoping I'm not boring the audience. Okay, is all my life I've dreamed about having an Indian motorcycle, the brand name Indian.
Yeah.
And I had posters. It's on my. I can't turn the camera now. It's on my wall. I've had that poster since the '70s. In fact, an old friend of mine came by. He remembered that poster. And now the company has been, in 2000, it was resurrected by a group of investors, and they made an Indian, and it was beautiful. It was better than the original, which I never thought I would ever say, right? But it was very expensive, and I wasn't in a position to buy it. Well, the company had some troubles. Anyway, they've been bought by Polaris, who put together an excellent engine, so it's available again. And I'm looking at it going, here it is. I mean, how many times does God have to reinvent the Indian motorcycle before I actually get off my duff and do it? But I'm scared, because I can't technically just buy it outright. I only have to take some of it in payments. And I'm worried about making that commitment based in the environment we're in. You know, I mean, it could be 2 weeks from now, the whole thing collapses. You know, so that's where I'm kind of. It's what it's just so unnecessary.
Well, if you learn how to do that part, absolutely include making your own alcohol so you can run it.
That's true. That's true.
No. That's if you're going to do that, then that's that Hopi thing that I was giving you. You know, have a sense of how you're going to run that baby when there's no more oil.
Mm.
And so, you know, you're up in Chicago, so you probably have Jerusalem artichoke and comfrey up there. That's a good solar alcohol. You know, that's a good source of solar alcohol. And these jojoba bean, and would they make castrol, and these super, what is it called, red line oil that you never breaks down because it's for rocket ships. I use that on my 280Z. You never have to do an oil change again. You know, Z's gonna, that's how you do it. And if you run it off the grid and your motorcycle, you know, what you do is have stash points or other people you go visit that has alcohol. You can barter to get home. That's how you're going to shuttle. Now, there's a book that was written about this. It was called Ecotopia, and it was written in 1980 by Ernest Callenbach. And the way the Washington, Oregon, and California secede from the Union in 1984, that's when the book takes place, opens up their doors in 1999 to show the rest of the world how they live without petroleum and off the grid. And the way they did it is by threatening people with the missing plutonium, saying that it was buried all over the United States. Oh, is that a Gordon Duff thing, isn't it? Yeah, the plutonium is buried everywhere. And, you know, if you don't allow Texas to secede from the Union, they're going to blow up Mississippi, that kind of thing. And so the book takes place in 1999, and everybody has bicycles. A couple guys like freaks like you had motorcycles where they did alcohol, I think. But mostly there were no combustion engines in Ecotopia. It was a model for how to be sovereign with being in harmony with our environment, Ernest Callenbach. And the newer version of that has been written by a man called Michael Tobias. He's voice of the planet. He's out of Berkeley with a snow leopard. And Meryl Streep and William Shatner did a 2-hour series with PBS called Voice of the Planet, where Meryl Streep is the supercomputer and William Shatner is the anthropologist that goes to Tibet to confront this artificial intelligence. It's an interesting book.
Wow, I've never heard of this. And
Voice of the Planet is a book on ecology and how to live in harmony by Michael Tobias at UC Berkeley. And before him, it was Ernest Callenbach.
I see both now.
Before that, it was Freddie the Pig detective series with Mrs. Pickrell going to Mars. I'm just messing with you. But I'm pretty well read. And I'm into ecology, like practical physics, things that work. I have a friend, Joe White, he's Quaker, up in Sandpoint, Idaho, at Peaceable Kingdom. He's in his 90s, and he's written a book called Organic Architecture. Imagine that. And they're now growing our buildings with mushrooms because they're strong and they're biodegradable. And there's new directions on the way we can live compared to what we're doing and, hostile to our environment. I'm very concerned about Fukushima. I'm very concerned about geoengineering. I'm very concerned about GMOs. I would say in fracking. Those are the big hit lists. And some of our solutions are going to lie in new technology around the structuring of water, most likely. That's probably how it's going to work.
How is that going to punch through this oil oligarchic system? I mean, is it just because it's going to collapse and it's going to have to search for something else? Or
well, Gaza is all about oil. It's Zionists and trying to take that oil system away. Russia, Ukraine, it's all oil. petrodollar and Iran with China and whatever. I don't know how that all works because I'm a nerd. I'm a scientist. I don't look at things quite like that. What I do know is I have seen the buoys that we've invented out here in Oregon that rise and fall with the tides to create power. Mm-hmm. And if we had that same system, very simple, up in Nova Scotia, where the tides change 60 feet every day, that would be enough power to feed the entire East Coast, and Tennessee Valley Authority could close down all those fault line reactors in a heartbeat. Now, I would not live on the East Coast anywhere on the Madrid fault line right now. And they're talking about the super volcano out of Yellowstone that is a big pimple ready to go. It is absolutely ready to go. And we'll, like the state of Hawaii, the big island, when it goes down into three pieces, the coastline changes. That's Navy projections. And so being sovereign starts at home with your relationship to yourself. And then you branch outward. And the first thing, like the Hopi said, what are you going to do about your water? Because if you don't have your water together, you will automatically be forced to join FEMA. And FEMA will be very much like a Hotel California. Mm. It's going to be like that. That's how it's going to be. Most people won't have their water together. Chicago will be in a mess, truthfully. Right now, you have RADCON 3 level alerts going on in Chicago. Did you know that?
No, I didn't. Yeah,
well, you're lit up like a globe map right now. I have no idea what that's about. Might be fracking, but that's the NETC.com, and what you've got there is the Nuclear Emergency Tracking Center. It's updated every minute, and it's kind of scary what's happening.
I actually got a thing in the mail. I mean, I knew this in the back of my mind, but I didn't really know it until I got it in the mail. I got a thing from the Atomic Energy Commission letting me know that I'm in the 10-mile radius of the Dresden nuclear power plant, and it was telling me what to do in case of emergency. I'm thinking, like, yeah, I know what to do. Bend down and kiss my butt. Goodbye, unless I get out of here.
The first thing you do is you start a grassroots movement to turn the switch off. That's what you do first. All of those Daiichi-like General Electric plants, like the one up that you're talking about, are over 20 years old, and they're all leaking right now. That's why you have RADCON level alerts going on all over. Now, the radiation levels can increase 10 times from normal background radiation. Is that dangerous? Most people probably would not be too terribly concerned. If it was 1,000 times, I'd put a dosimetry badge on high energy physics. If it was 100 times, it would be like going through 9 airports, getting nuked in 9 different, look at me with X-ray. Now, 10 times, any radiation, ionizing radiation, is dangerous. It's going to be really hard on the children. Japan right now, 28% of the children today have some kind of thyroid problem. And there are, just as little as last week, a large body of scientists, mostly medical, calling for the complete evacuation of Japan. It's not healthy. It's not safe. You know it. I know it. The media is not reporting it. And now we have another radiation band up there besides the Van Allen belt. We've got a ionized layer of plutonium and strontium-90 up in the stratosphere.
Thanks to the test, the atmospheric test. Yeah.
When it went up, we were misquoted and told that it was a partial meltdown. It wasn't either. It was a nuclear explosion. It blew up. And worse,
I saw that. I saw it real time. I saw it real time, and I said that looks like a.
Okay, but they didn't report that. What they did is turned all the cleanup over to their mafia, the Yakuza.
Huh. Now, well, hold on for 1 minute. We're going to take this break, and then we'll come back. It's hour 1, 2 more to go. If you want to join us, it's 888-863-2722, or send emails or whatnot. I'll get to the questions. Richard Adler Miller here. We're live, and we'll be right back.
Can I take a break?
Cam is off. All right. right, we are back, and we're live with Richard Allen Miller. I have to let the music die, thanks to the sharks that are out there in the copyright thing here. But that's another reason to listen to the show live, because you can get the extra little goodies from the songs. So anyway, we're back with Richard Allen Miller live, and welcome back, Richard.
Thank you.
I've actually found your Power Tools book cover that I'm going to try and insert it in the video here while we're talking.
I took a chance with that one. I thought it was risky.
It's kind of a cool cover, though. I mean, it's kind of like a comic book type thing, so it's kind of cool.
Well, there you go. That's what New Age. Yeah.
Right. I wanted to...
Spaceships, ray guns, all of it.
I'm hearing all kinds of stuff here. One thing about people can say about this show is it's real, because I'm dealing with both fires and distractions at the same time. But I did write down some things in the email I sent you. One thing I want to ask you about was this super villain that just popped up to me overnight, which is ISIS. The way I kind of look at it is Al Qaeda was kind of fading. It didn't have the oomph it did, and so they had to make another super villain. And this well-funded quote. This is from the senators. Was well-funded and diabolical threat to the United States to date, and they expect looking for an actual destroying a city. I'm thinking, you know how hard it is to destroy a city? I mean, they've been bombing Iraq for how many years? It's still there, you know? So the only thing I can think what they mean by that is a nuclear bomb. Now, where are they going to get a nuclear bomb from? How are they going to deliver it? How are they going to get it here? How are they going to keep it, actually have it work, since most of our nuclear arsenal doesn't work anyway? Can you give me any insights on this?
Well, there is missing plutonium. That is a reality. There's unaccountable nuclear storage plants have had theft, and there's missing bombs. The whole thing is not real in that it's to cause fear and panic, like Ebola and all the rest of the types of things that you have a concern about for that moment, the flight that was shot down, that kind of thing. What's really important right now to worry about something like that? ISIS, if you go into Greek mythology, the Temple of Isis was, basically a young maiden would go into the temple as a virgin, and then whoever showed up at the temple determined who she was going to have sex with, and that broke her and made her into a woman. And then she either became a Sibyl or went out into life finding a mate, and so on. Temple of Isis, and a bunch of big old cats walking around. I don't know what it all means. The stuff I've seen would indicate Mossad has been involved with it, like they were involved with 9/11. None of that reporting of 9/11 was true. That was basically they needed a body count to get a terrorism bill through Congress, and how they did it. I mean, I did a calculation on the one building. It was within 3%. It was free fall. That's demolition.
Yeah.
That's not an airplane hitting it. They've had a ton of experts. Why is it that the media isn't over that like stink on shit?
Well, they're involved.
Why? Well, who's involved? The owner?
The media owners? Yeah. I mean, I would imagine that what they do is their business is to do what they're told. And they've been fed by the government what to say. Now, whether they're consciously aware of it being a cover-up or not, they just do what they're told.
I find it interesting that there are corporations like Johnson & Johnson that have a $3 billion quarter, which is the annual incomes for the state of Oregon expenditures, $3.2 billion. And that's just one quarter with Johnson & Johnson in your neck of the woods. And so there are transnational corporations that are above the government, and they're larger than the government. Like when Monsanto took the state of Vermont to court and tried to break them as a state. Mexico, by the way, did a very cool thing just 2 days ago when they shot Monsanto down big time in Mexico. They now have an old corn. Good, you got that picture. Take a look at that cavitating water. That'll give you 1,000 words of what I'm talking about with that ball that follows behind the drop of water.
Yeah, I have it up on the picture for those watching as well.
It's unbelievable. Now, that is Roger Penrose and his physics and his book, Geometric Universe from Princeton. His work is exceptional, and the individual that went further on that mathematics was Alex Kavarinen, who was a Finnish physicist that had done reporting when Jerry Pollack and others were presenting their works on water. It was Alex Kavarinen that was providing the mathematics of how it works. That's what I've been doing now. And the interesting thing that I'm doing with fullerenes and is understanding what it would be like to put water inside a Dyson sphere as a metaphor. What you do is take 60 carbon atoms and you structure it, the 60 atoms, it's called C60. It forms a buckyball, and you put water inside it, and those geometric surfaces, okay, cause the structuring of water to become a machine. That's what structuring water does. It takes it from being neutral water and turns it into a nanobot. And the nanobot does different things depending on the structure of it. That's how it works. And so imagine putting water inside a Dyson sphere. Only this one is Buckminster Fuller's buckyball. It's 60 surfaces. There is a C70 molecule that they've been exploring as well, but Shigite and some of the others is a C60 molecule. And what it does is the water becomes a super antioxidant, like orders of magnitude beyond anything that you would get from ergot or hydrogen or, some of the other, antioxidants that we have in our diet. Nothing is like it. And what happens is that these little fullerene molecules, are 60 carbon atoms, and they got water inside it, form microtubules that go after and isolate isotopes and specific heavy metals and washes them out of your body. That's how it works. Now, they're trying to suggest in the marketplace that it is a homeopathic thing, that you only need one or two molecules of exclusion zone water. You drop it in and it restructures the whole thing. That's the idea of homeopathy. And that has been the direction of some of the research that's going on, that personally, I think it's more important that you flush your system with a bunch of it all at once. And imagine what that does in terms of your adenosine triphosphate. ATP, when you eat your mushrooms, that oxygen that is released from that sugar molecule, the beta-glucan that you're taking, polysaccharide, excuse me, when that breaks down, it creates adenosine triphosphate in your body. That is literally, if you look at the physics of it, it's a quark gluon plasma. It's a cold fusion pump. And it is what changed when Kirvan did his biological transmutations, the distinction between going from sodium to potassium in the body. We knew the cold fusion was occurring in the body, but we didn't know where, and now we do. It's ATP. And that food, that cordyceps that you eat, will actually increase your ATP, or juice. That's why the Chinese used it to win all those gold medals at the Olympics. And they had a big drug testing, found it to be neutral, absolutely valid. And basically, it's about oxygen, creating ATP. And that includes the brain, which means you've got more juice up there, too, for firing. Now, if you structure the waters, now you have the possibility of becoming a Superman with longer extended aging processes and related maladies of quality of life. And it has to do with internal landscape and your metaphor of the thoughts you choose to entertain. And so you have to become more mindful of your intent. And that is the big issue now. It's called the Stanford argument. It's at Stanford University on the distinctional difference between intent and intentionality. Intentionality is kind of like Maxwell Smart, missing it by that much. And intent is what actually ends up happening at the end of the day. That is what was supposed to happen. And you can do it flowing, or you can do it kicking and screaming. You have that choice. The distraction is for you to forget what you were trying to do in the first place. Sorry about that. I did my Buddha thing on you, didn't I?
No, I mean, I appreciate this because I've noticed. I'm taking what you're saying, and I'm resonating it. That's the only way I can describe it. Resonating into my life.
You're getting it in your own sense and in your own place, and how you can use it for yourself. Good. That's the part.
I mean, because that's what I've noticed is that, like for example, a year ago I bought my own truck, which then provided more income for really almost a little bit more work. I have responsibility in the truck, but then it's done the way I want it to, etc. And the way when I decided to, I literally woke up from sleeping. I'm going to have to get a truck. I came up out of morning. It's all in my head already, and by the end of the day, I had a truck. Boom, like that, a good one, that had the proper working because I knew the guy who had it. I knew he took care of it. It just went like this, la la la. If I would have tried to do that, other guys at work are fighting to do that, and they have trucks and troubles and things and that. And I've had little troubles, but I can tell when I'm in the flow. I can tell, and when I'm out of the flow, I can tell.
You know it because it's sacred. That is the distinction between the sacred and the profane. And what you're trying to do is move toward joy. I started talking about love. The Quakers moved it to bliss, with Eastern philosophies and meditation. And then the highest form was joy. And so, of course, a good friend of mine that teaches down in Petaluma, the Quaker school down there, had a child called Beyond Joy. The Quakers, you got to give it to them. They're friends of the earth. That's what it's about. Your relationship to your environment.
Well, you know what? I'd rather talk about this stuff than ISIS and whatnot, because to me this is.
I know. That's why I changed it a little bit. ISIS is just another false flag, of multitude of false flags to distract us and being angry. And it isn't about anger. You can have civil disobedience like Mahatma Gandhi. That's why you live in the country as opposed to in the city. You can be more of an outlaw. Live the way you want to live.
Mm-hmm.
Have the kind of bike you want to have. Ride your bike. Doing the checkered demon.
Yeah.
He drove an Indian.
Oh, yeah? Oh.
Yeah, in the comic books.
Oh. All right, I'm not really comic book versed, so.
Ruby the Dyke, they all had Indians. They weren't Harleys. They were.
I went to a Harley dealer on the weekend to look at them, and I like them, but I'm open, right? I learned this: don't be open. But as I go in and I look at the options, I keep going back to it, and not even the newest ones either, which are probably more easier to buy or perhaps safer to buy.
Oh, you ought to get one your age, like I did my 280C. And when I changed the rust panel, I put a pin in my hip. That kind of thing. Metaphor. Restoring.
Because the one I got on the wall is a 47. They're very hard to find, but the 2000 and 2001 models are my favorite. So,
sounds to me like you've already made up your decision.
But I'm still worried about the engine, though. I guess the right one will come to me. Is that how it works?
That's how it'll work.
Okay.
Someone will die and it'll fall in your lap.
Okay, well then I'm not going to worry about it anymore. On to things that are probably more pressing to people listening. Now, as I'm looking into consciousness, I can't believe that the human beings are the only conscious entities on Earth. I mean, I've come up with a model and I actually have friends who've just popped in with a little piece, and it opens up a whole thing in my head, right? And one thing I'm thinking about is all life is consciousness. I mean, I in fact even go all matter is consciousness. But like when you say like a tree, for example, would be the best example of how consciousness can manifest itself with the limitations of being a tree. And
you mean like aspen, which is the largest life form on Earth? That whole forest grove in Aspen, Colorado, is a single entity.
I was just going to ask you about that. The thing about trees and plants, I don't think that the tree is a sovereign individual consciousness. It seems like the trees are. Now, I don't know how it forms between oak and aspen or pine.
Yeah.
Do you
Habitat again. Yeah, there's a woman at the University of British Columbia that has talked about, you do mother tree, University of British Columbia, and up she'll come, has a video talking about a mother tree. When you have a forest, you have a single tree in that forest, which is the oldest tree in the forest, and the mycorrhiza in the soil sets up a network of defenses for all the entire forest, keyed off that mother tree. It's just almost exactly like out of Avatar. That's where the concept originally came from. And the idea of the mycorrhiza forming a network of communication with all the other trees is kind of like your body. You're a habitat of a universe. With ATP, you see you're actually creating a new universe at every given moment that ATP is being generated. Because a quark gluon plasma does not exist after 1/10 of a millisecond of the first of the Big Bang. And you're reproducing that quark gluon plasma in your body continuously. So you're like a universe that is on a certain level of relationship to other universes. That's why I chose to do a holographic system of metaphor rather than quantum. Quantum mechanics deals with space and time. And we know that space and time at some level are subsets, and there's something beyond space and time, what they would call five space, like sliders, where you had all possibilities of a multiverse, and then sixth space, and then seventh space. And so time and space in a quantum mechanical system, you have what's called indeterminacy. That means the more you know about one thing, the less you know about something else. And that means a quantum mechanical universe has limitations of where you can and what you can do in that structure.
Mm-hmm.
A holographic system would suggest, for example, that your emotional awareness is more important than your intellect. And that's why I have to give it to women, and their intuitions and emotional maturity, that it is like, that's how your higher self talks to yourself. That's how your dreams and your impressions are not so much about things as they are your feelings about them. And the feeling about that Indian.
Now wait, this is really wild, because I've having dreams about it, and you're just and I'm thinking about the dreams and going like, yeah, well, I've had dreams about it, and I was trying to figure them out because it didn't seem to make sense. It wasn't like it would, but if you look at it from an emotional point of view, it does make sense.
Now it has a lot of content. It has more detail in terms of over the physical. That's why EQ is more important than IQ. It is more resolution of the information. There are 8 planes in the system I use, working off of Timothy Leary and his neurologic circuits. And each one is unique: physical, emotional, intellectual, archetypal, microtubule, and it goes on up. The archetypal level is the numinous, where you and I become one, and I am the walrus. Well, it's like, I mean, that's where you and I become one in terms of the group or collective unconscious. Mm-hmm. That is what the archetypal plane of existence is. And they're all based on neurotransmitters that Timothy Leary identified as neurologic circuits. And it's basically, you have 7 octaves in a chord. 7 chords in an octave, where you have the 7 different notes and then the octave, which brings it back. And the 8th one, as above, so below, is the sun. That's
Well, yeah. In fact, that's what that's what I was looking at, and then it keeps going.
All the work.
Once you get to the 8th one, it's like it starts over again, but on a different level. So you go up the levels and so forth and so on. And I always thought the sun would be the 8th because that's like but then it's an octave, so that's why it can still react with us.
And, in my Power Tools book, in chapter 8, I talk about ontologies of mystical states, where in the Eastern traditions, Hinduism and so on, they do talk about samadhis and different states or cosmic levels of consciousness. They're called samadhis or siddhas. And the highest forms are when you're doing it with total conscious awareness. Don Curtis Gowan was the one that started that when he talked about trance, art, and creativity. And creative states would include sex magic and biofeedback, where you're using toys and enhancements to kickstart and increase your level of awareness. That's what we did. We developed these protocols for Navy SEALs to make them literally supermen by expanding their consciousness. You know, the first protocol to determine SEAL Unit 1 was not how strong he was or how many bridges he could blow up. It was generally figured that they could train him how to do that. What they needed was intuition. And so they were measuring ESP. How intuitive, how clever was he to use his instinct working with the enteric nervous system or the gut, which is your first brain. And that's why the first book that I wrote was called ESP Induction Through Forms of Self-Hypnosis. It was how to think with your gut, how to not think with the logical mind, because that mind would get you killed.
All right, now, I keep reverting to that. I mean, I'm doing much better. I will say honestly, I'm doing much better. But I've caught myself. It's like in times of like stress, I'll revert back to that, and I put nope, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And I'm getting better, but I still have that ghost in the past.
So that part is called Simon Says You Can Go Halfway to the Door. that you'll never get to the door because that's not the purpose. It's the journey.
Yeah, well, and actually, if not to beat this Indian into the ground, but
You're not supposed to get it completely mastered. It is a process or a layer.
But I'm looking at everything that's coming into my life. I'm assuming it's a journey. You know, it's like there's a lessons along the way, and the item or where I'm going for isn't the point. It may be it's involved in it, but that's not the point. The point is the journey. And journey to an Indian motorcycle, so be it. The journey is going to be the important part. So I'm trying to like look at the journey. I'm looking around. I'm looking around the journey.
So that place, the journey place, is called Tippereth, which is where you're going, or Path 25. Path 25 is also known as art. It's a process. It's not a final product. That means it doesn't have an end. It doesn't work like that.
Right, so I would imagine along the journey there's going to be, I don't know what you want to call
distractions.
Well, I mean, it'll be plateaus of advancement, or you know.
Yeah, you hit different places. It comes out of Merkaba mysticism and the Tree of Life and what they call Hermetic Kabbalism. That's what I study. When I didn't find answers in physics, I went and studied the old Bible. As it comes out, I didn't find answers there either. But I did make some very interesting discoveries. For example, I don't know if you know this or not, but the Bibles, the old ones in Greek and Old Hebrew, would suggest that there were a hierarchy of gods. They did make a distinction between Yahweh and Yod-Heh-Vah-Heh. They did suggest after Yod-Heh-Vah-Heh, which is God, the veils of Isis, Ein Sof, and Ein Sof Ur. And of course, I like to quote Bob Dylan when he's saying, everybody's got to serve somebody.
Yeah. Well, I actually discovered my movement and enlightenment out of my study of the Bible because it broke me out of the church by actually looking at the document that they based their doctrine on and finding the problems with their doctrine.
Well, there were a lot of translations, and a lot of books were left at certain points in history out of the Bible, like Enoch.
Yeah, Enoch. Enoch's kind of an important one. I even mentioned it in Jude. I would look into Greek and Hebrew without learning it. I mean, I got a bunch of books over to the side here where I got Hebrew, and I had to look up the Hebrew words and the letters, and try to remember them like pictures and find them.
Sept 7th, the Book of Formation.
Yeah. So, all right, let's take a break here, and we'll be back as we talking with Richard Allen Miller. And as you can see, it's all over the place, and it's every place at the same time. So if you want any questions or whatnot, I still have a million left, and he has a bunch of things that he'll pull out of his rabbit hole that we're going down as we learn to not think, but feel our way through life. But I guess you got to think a little bit, though. We'll be back anyway. All right, we are talking with Richard Allen Miller, richardallenmiller.com, ALAN, Miller.com. His books are available through oak-publishing.com. We do have a YouTube of the last interview we did. If you are first time you're hearing Richard Allen Miller, you can go back and listen to that, as well as there's other interviews with him all over the place. Been on Coast to Coast and other shows. And now we have the privilege of talking with him here. And welcome back, Richard.
Thank you. You bet. Make sure my voice is on. Yeah, good.
Yeah, there we go. Now, I had a question in the chat room for kind of a clarification, and I thought it's pretty cool to talk about this. You're talking about not living in fear, and yet in giving the message of no electricity, finding water and all that, there is a fear element in it. So what is the difference between fear and motivation to prepare or change for future things? Yeah,
all of that. Castaneda. I always like to go back to Carlos Castaneda. There were the four enemies of men. Do you remember that?
Well, I did start reading the book, but I had a hard time dealing with him wrestling with the dog.
I know. Well, he was psychotic, so, but yeah, basically. I have a picture of Don Gennaro. I'm going to upload a picture of Don Gennaro that we took for the military that was actually a flying sorcerer. And I have a picture of him. It was in a very rare magazine called Arts Canada in the Stones, Bones, and Skin issue. Peter First and I found him down in central Mexico, and we got a picture of him actually flying. Don Juan was a composite, but basically the idea of the warrior was that there were four enemies in man. The first was fear, and that once you overcame fear, you achieved some degree of personal power. And then power became an enemy and corrupted you. And power corrupts, like ultimate power corrupts ultimately kind of thing. And then you started to see things more clearly. And when you did that, that then also became an enemy. Because to think that you have the big picture, even when you are still in fourth grade, is kind of like trying to presume. Yeah, well, okay.
That's where
the fourth enemy. Huh?
That's where Socrates comes in, where he
talks there about. You go. Yeah, self-inflicted, I might add. But the fourth enemy is what I'm currently enjoying, which is old age. Once you get it, then you're too old to do anything about it. Well, you have to laugh because none of this is real. The only thing that's actually truly real is your imagination. And if you can somehow take grip of that and direct it, or at least begin that arduous path toward better control of it, that's the Simon Says part. Now you achieve a type of union with self, which is actually joy. That is what joy is. It's union with self. And there's things beyond joy that I'm now experiencing, but it's not. You're not supposed to talk about interplane experiences for fear of contaminating someone else's experience. And when I said, well, the reason is we're all different.
Right.
And the way we would actually experience it, the way you experience your Indian, that automatically touches you in a place that is unique for you. And that place is what we seek in ourselves. that place. And the way you can begin to identify it is that what is actually happening, not what you would like to have happen or what is not happening. You know, I have that picture of the glass that's half full and the glass that's half empty. And the glass that's half empty is the same glass, but because you're looking at it differently, it structures what you've lost, not what you've gained. Of course, a third glass that's half full of a yellow liquid could be also considered full of piss. So, it's it's arbitrary.
I mean, this is what I think. What the powers have done to make money is we're trying to find our personal joy, which is connected to ourselves. So they have external things and tell us that these bring joy. People go over those things. They think it's the joy. They get there, and it's not joy.
Well, how about a new car?
Yeah.
Behind door number 3, it's a new car.
I know.
And
well,
everybody gets all excited, until the metal there's no metal in it. It's all plastic now, and when you replace the fender, you have to replace the whole thing. Yeah. It's the whole thing's about marketing. It's not the same, is it?
Well, see, but using that same idea, I then look at going for my Indian. Am I doing the same thing? Am I looking at external? I say no, but,
So the difference is between the way you say it and somebody else has to do with values. And values are actually very arbitrary. And one of the reasons why, one of the protocols that I trained SEALs on was how to change a belief, like you would a pair of clothing. Now, with that said, and I've said this before, so it isn't new, I have, as a metaphor, a pair of bell-bottom pants I'm never going to throw away. I'll never fit in them again. I'm 33-inch waist. I'm 38 now. There's no way I'm ever going to fit in those pair of bell-bottom pants. But do you think I'm going to throw them away? Belief systems are like that. They may not be appropriate, and they may get you killed. If you have to go to Iraq and you went in as a staunch Christian, that alone is going to limit your survival coefficient. And so it's important to be able to witness yourself. That means where you're watching yourself, watch yourself. Several layers of it. And the more that you can do that allows a level of awareness of self in dialogue that approaches joy. It actually does. And to be able to surgically remove, like the big question I used to say is, if you were a staunch Christian and 2 aliens walked in the door, the big question is, could you see them? Your belief is what fixes your reality. I wouldn't have seen it if I hadn't believed it. It's important to realize that our beliefs shape the possibility of what's possible in our universe. And that's the difference of being inside a box where everything is known and everything is safe, or taking a chance and stepping outside of the box for a moment, and the uncertainty of not knowing what's going to happen next. And it's uncomfortable. And that's why a lot of people don't like to step outside the box. But if you realize that change is literal, inevitable, it is the prime directive, change. That voice of reason and voice of coyote then now become the same voice and are what lead you toward self. And you can do it kicking and screaming, or you can become an adult and take personal responsibility for man doesn't actually have rights. He has responsibilities. Having rights would presume you had full disclosure. You don't. So what you do have is true will, not free will. And that's what Aleister Crowley called true will, the idea of purpose. Now, there's a book that was written by a teacher of mine that I find extremely relevant in this situation. It's called The Soul's Code in Search of Character and Calling by I just had a brain fart and I can't. James Hillman. James Hillman has written a bunch of books. He is the primary architect for what we call imaginal psychology or third generation imaginal psychology. Stuff like Kubler-Ross and others of that nature. He is the leader in that. His book previous to The Soul's Code, In Search of Character and Calling, was called 100 Years of Psychotherapy and Things Are Getting Worse. He was really a good writer. He's got the pulse of it. And the idea that our primary reason here is to discover our purpose and then to do it. And that our character, the nooks and crannies of, the death of your child, that this or that determines how you're going to do something, your character. Character in this case could be considered somewhat analogous to spirit in terms of your intent, the spirit of it, not what you do, but how you do it, the character of it, the manner in which you go about your personal path working. That's why in magic it's called path working, for knowledge and conversation, or to be able to talk to your higher self or angel like you and I are talking to each other. And everybody is doing that right now. They're just not aware of it and they don't dial it in. And a good place to start getting more awareness of that would be in journaling. Ira Progoff and keeping a diary, of your dreams, of the wish you wanted for that motorcycle, all those little pieces of yourself that you're talking to yourself, and feelings. You record that, that's called magical memory. That is what actually happens when you become aware of self. You all of a sudden realize your purpose by seeing who you were in last life and where you stopped, and you pick up where you left off. And that's called magical memory, to be able to remember why you were here in the first place and to pick up where you left off to complete the job.
I guess what I can thank my mother for this, but I always have doubted myself for because I get information and I go, one of the things is some of the stuff sounds too ego-based, like I've come here I've had many lives and I'm using all of my tools in this life to help people and grow and integrate it all. And that's what comes to me when I ask what I'm doing. But it's like, that sounds like there's billions of people on this planet, half of which go to bed not knowing they're going to eat tomorrow. And here I stand. And so I have a hard time reconciling all the simple needs that are going unmet because of greed and me coming here to integrate myself and to make my little dent in it.
Yeah. In my system of behavior, I have come to the fact that I'm not going to be able to change you. What I can do is change myself.
Right, right.
And then witness that.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So in that movie, Lucy, that was a great movie.
I was what's his name? Andrew wanted me to see that before I talked to you, but I couldn't do it, so.
Too bad. Well, here we go. Because the way they proposed it is the human organism is either immortal or it reproduces to pass on its knowledge. And so your children, in a metaphor, could be seen as little mini-me's of you and your wife.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like carrying on your knowledge base in the genetics. And in fact, there's not a lot of untruth in that. I raised my daughter in imaginal psychology as if she didn't exist, that I was hallucinating so badly that when I was talking to her, I was basically talking to the younger feminine part of myself. And by looking at her that way, I couldn't make judgment on what she did right or wrong. She just was able to do things I couldn't do. And yet I was proud of her and gave me dialogue to a part of myself that was projected into the world as my daughter or my future self. Now, there's lots of ways you can approach even Alexander's works and Proof of Heaven. I got to meet that man. I know what there is going to happen after death. There's an excellent movie that depicts what happens after death. It's called Astral City. It is in Portuguese, so you need English subtitles. And it's this doctor that watches himself at the moment of his death. We're losing him, code blue, blah, 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 beep, beep, beep. And then the movie takes on what happens next. And basically, the over premise of this non-religious depiction of life after death basically would suggest that the physical plane is where you get to go be sick spiritually, and that your fever is the hallucination of what you're experiencing in life right now. And that when you wake up, death, you go back home to the future and then pick up your purpose. And it turns out, just for the record, in my modeling system, I don't get to get out of here until you get your job part of it done, because we're all part of the same collective unconscious. And in order for me to get out of here, you have to do your job. That means that every single person has got a part of the whole that has to happen for me to evolve. That's how it works.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, and
it takes more responsibility on the importance of minding your own store.
Right.
Not making judgment on another, but minding your own one. And what they choose to do, it's their choice, just like yours is to do your will.
But that goes along with Buddha, who had the option to move on, and he said he wasn't going to go until all his brethren are moving on.
That's because he couldn't.
Yeah. It takes away the nobility of that statement, I guess. But
there you go.
But let me ask you, since we're talking about dreams here, I had a dream, and as I saw a car that was on fire, and I ran up to it, and I looked in the window, and it was a woman holding her child, and the window was open or broken or something, just enough so she's trying to push her child through the opening to me, and she's on fire. And I looked at that, and I could have took the child out, but I just wouldn't accept the premise. Unacceptable. I said, I just got so angry. Not angry, but like, no. And I just ripped off the door like it was nothing, like a superhero. And I would not accept that she was on fire and all that. And when I looked in, the fire was out around her, and she was unhurt, and I got them both out. So I'm like, wow, what does that mean? You know,
the unacceptable part, you wouldn't accept what was being given as an offer for choices, and you made something different happen. And that is divine. That part is what makes us God's favored.
I mean, so I had some other experiences. I don't know if I mentioned this before. I mentioned them on the air before. That, give me an example. I'm driving a truck. I've been driving for, I'm 32 years now. This was several years ago. I'm driving a truck. I'm coming down the highway. It just rained. It's slippery. I turn a corner, go under a bridge. This is near Louisville on 64. As I come down and turn, all the cars are stopped. I mean, they're just stopped like, 20 and 30 of them deep. I know there's no way I'm going to stop. I had no clue because it was a turn, and I wasn't going really fast. Speed limit or less. And I'm going to stop. I know I'm going to hit them. I'm going to plow right into them. And I hit the brakes, and I just yelled with all my body, just like this dream. I just said, no. As I hit the brakes, and I swear this is what happened, time slowed down, and I was able to stop the truck ridiculously far from them. I mean, it was like no chance of me even coming close to hitting them. And I just stood there I sat there in the truck going, what just happened? Because I know I couldn't have stopped. The ground was wet. I'm an experienced driver. I know this.
Well, that's the part about changing the movie that I like to talk about. The ability to change the timeline.
No, I mean, was that because I was so, I don't know what's the word, like this dream, was I so committed to not accepting what was happening? I mean, how did that work? What is that called?
Well, that's called your thought changed the reality.
I know, but why did it change then and other times it didn't? I mean,
I don't know that that's not true.
oh,
I think it changes all the time. It's how you choose to see what happened. You didn't want to get me. Yeah. And so memory is a duration of consciousness. That's what time really is. It's not real. It's a duration of consciousness. It's the way you store information.
I mean, at times I can actually sit here in my thought and it just seems like for a millisecond, everything disappears. I mean, but it's still here,
right,
but it disappears. It's like...
That's called sacred time. That's going from the profane into the sacred, the moment. That's the place that you want to seek more and more. That space of sacredness.
Well, most of this stuff, I don't sit down and do it. It's usually circumstance brings me to that moment. Now, how can I bring it to the moment without having to rely on circumstance to bring it to the moment?
Take more responsibility for making it happen the way you want it to happen by forcing it and being mindful, bringing it back and continue to practice. You don't get halfway to the door. You're always going halfway to the door.
Mm-hmm.
It's the journey of taking the first step. And the first step is a baby step. That's the way Carl Sagan put it. Small steps, Allie. You take it by a series of small steps, including your garden, becoming sovereign, getting up off the couch, and discovering your purpose. One step at a time.
Yeah, but my purpose scares me. I mean, when I actually let myself open up and say, what's my purpose? What comes scares me. Because it sounds to me like an ego prefabrication, like the dream, for example, ripping off the door and all that. That sounds like something I watched the X-Men the day before and I had a dream about it. It feels like my purpose is to interject into reality to change it. Now, of course, everyone does that. I understand that. But to do it on a conscious level and have it be affecting other people and be conscious of that, it's, I'd go, maybe intimidating? I don't know what the word is.
Well, they call it magic. The art of changing consciousness at will. That is what it is. It is an advanced form of physics with a mystery school.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, all right, so what I'm basically asking you to tell me here is I'm not delusional by these things.
No, you're not delusional.
Okay, all right.
You're quite normal. The time thing happens to all of us. Most of us don't even remember it like you did. It's over. It goes on. You forget it.
I just can't forget it. It was so profound. Now, maybe that was underlined this time, so I got it. I don't know. It was absolutely amazing. But that's what I think to do, and I'm trying to piece it all together because I've made mistakes along the way. I'm trying to piece it all together. So I want to go forward consciously. And if I have to walk through fire consciously, okay, but I don't want to have to make a wrong choice and walk through fire because then you're doing it like the hard way, like you said, kicking and screaming. I want to know what's going on and take that step forward.
Well, I have found that the Valley of the Shadow of Death is the candy section in the grocery store.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Hold on there.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break, and we'll come back and talk with Richard Allen Miller live on Feet to the Fire. Stay tuned. Well, you YouTubers just missed probably the greatest voice I've ever heard in my life, Sheila Chandra. If you can get her greatest hits CD, I would, pay for it. I mean, I'd pay $100 for it. It is absolute perfection in the female human voice, at least actually perfection. She started out in the, I think it was 80s, with a pop kind of band in England. and eventually married her producer, and they went into a solo thing. It's just absolutely wonderful. She speaks in kind of tongues at times. I don't find that too good, though. I mean, it's very interesting, but it doesn't take me to that place like that does. Anyway, speaking of taking to places, our guest today is Richard Allen Miller. RichardAllenMiller.com is the place to go, and you can branch out in there, or just simply run his name through Google. You'll find a million things. And welcome back, Richard.
Thank you. Yes.
So
we're all over the map, and I'm enjoying myself, though, so that's cool.
Yeah, and I that's how I am, though. I mean, I enjoy this over the map stuff because I could sit back and listen to it again and again and think about it and bring it out. If you learn like one thing, then when you're I don't know if I get bored or what have you, but all the stuff all the time, it's just great. And I'm saving all these links that you're coming up with, put them in the on the webpage with the archives of it. So
I've got lots more where that came from, no problem.
Yeah. So I got I've been opening these files too. Are these web pages or are these actual?
Yeah, those are all links. Yes, and this cage one is the molecule showing exactly how the polymer works in the geoengineering. This polymer is in everything now, unfortunately, and it was described in Science Digest. You have a copy of it. Mm-hmm. The cage one. I have actually several others I could send you. They're visuals so that you get a better sense of how it works. What they are is a bacteria that was located in the stratosphere. It's called an extremovite. It lives at 100 below Fahrenheit, and healthy and fruitful and multiplied. And they mutated it in laboratories down here to do something a little more different. And then they use it in the chemtrail where this bacteria creates this polymer that has a specific geometry to it that when lined with barium oxide will actually attract and desiccate water out of the atmosphere, create artificial clouds. Now, the original uses of this was to try to control weather like, San Francisco airport in the 50s with iodine crystals, things of that nature. Now they're using barium oxide. And what the idea of a cavitation weapon, originally they were going to try to use HAARP, it didn't work, was that they're hitting it with a microwave beam that superheats the water that's trapped in these polymers. And what you have is a new phenomena which is different than cavitation. It's called supercavitation. And it basically is a thermal bomb. It goes boom, but it goes boom with heat. And the heat, because of the structuring in the water, I was watching when they set one off. I have pictures and that I can send to you of the first weapons testing of it on Hawaii and Tennessee. But about a month ago, you had those terrible storms that happened simultaneously with Hawaii with the two typhoons that were going to hit it, hurricanes. Not hurricanes, that was collateral damage later. There was this storm coming right straight for Hawaii, and then like most storms was going off to sea and breaking down. And just when it did that, they set off the first geoengineering, or what we call a geobomb, over the large state of Hawaii, and then a second one over Maui. And you can actually see on NOAA infrared, you can see the cavitation occurring that is causing a tornado to form. And what that did with collateral damage is it caused the two subsequent hurricanes, and Tennessee was hammered big time with the weather things that they had this last month. It is a new Star Wars weapon that I suspect was also used in Gaza 2 weeks ago when they had an explosion. You can actually see a laser beam coming from space, hitting the ground and vaporizing the water, causing a cavitation explosion, which changes the weather. Now, this polymer it's a piece of plastic. And is collateral damage. It's in everything. You can put a swab inside your mouth and actually put it down on a slide, and there it is at 600 mics. You can see it. And what is it doing? I don't know. I suspect that it's doing the same thing it does in the atmosphere. It's super dehydrating your body, which means that if you're a 200-pound person, the normal formula is that you need 100 ounces. You take half your weight, divide it by two, and change it to ounces, from pounds to ounces. So that a normal 200-pound male needs probably about 100 ounces of water aside, every day, just going through your system. And with this polymer, I'm now guessing it's probably about 130 ounces. In other words, a third more water than any of us realize, and that we're all of us super dehydrated. You can see it in your urine and your saliva. You spit, your saliva will be white. You'll have a cough or a sore throat. These are all symptoms of this polymer that's in everything now, everybody, and every nation in the world. It's why we no longer see stars. Everything is fuzzy.
Well, I like how you just come out with this huge boom of information here. This is the first time I've heard this is huge, and it explains a lot of what's been going on with the.
Yeah. I'm on this. Look, there are 8 different forms of geoengineering right now ongoing, including Monsanto and the United Nations on an aluminum-resistant GMO. Get a grip. But the primary one is a new Star Wars weapon that creates this polymer. That Science Digest, that cage artwork, that's how it works. And the collective structure is one of a number of technical information that I can get into, how deep you want to get into it. It all came, again, out of MIT and other laboratories. My guess is this is not why I got hacked, but I'm going to say that if I can figure it out, now, that's the other part of it. When I can't figure it out, how's that work? Because I was as good as it gets for the military. I was able to, peace thing, and when I come to a fork in the road, instinctively know which would be the more technically correct way to go. We're not even talking Occam's razor. I just had instinct. And so, with that said, I am encountering things that I can't figure out. And that would suggest to me that we've been invaded by something. And I'm not kidding when I say that. I'm not going to suggest aliens, but there's something else going on here, because if I can't figure it out, what does that suggest? I'm almost as good as it gets, and there is things going on here that are real creepy. And I would prefer quieter farm life. I really would. I'm not interested in being known and famous. I'm just trying to sell books and make a living because of my Social Security. That truth, so I don't have any money. It's going to get much worse for all of us. And I figure I would like to incarnate off this earth right now rather than have to come back and have to wear a gas mask, because basically they're hijacking your air now, just like they tried to do your water and your food. I think that if you want sovereignty, you start with water, and then you move to trying to garden a little bit, where you have not all your food, but at least a small portion of it, so you feel secure that you have something to eat that you can do on your own. The more you do this, the better and higher level of awareness you become. It is a type of union with self, independence. It's a metaphor. Boom. I love it. And I can prove all of this. I have the technical map. The cavitation, the supercavitation, is Euler's equation divided by 2. It's on the Wikipedia. You can find it. Supercavitation. And that technology is now what is most likely going to be used for an inertialess drive that is outside space-time. It's like in a torus twister model where the exclusion zone is the topological surface itself. That is what the exclusion zone boundary is in water. It is the topological surface layer of what is turning into itself. By the way, that's a really cool science fiction story you might want to read by Alan Dean Foster. Into the Out of. He's the one who wrote Star Wars, and Maori and, a bunch of others. But he's got one about a witch doctor that watches as there's a little schism in reality and a demon steps out. It's called Into the Out of. Kind of like Skinwalker Ranch or something.
All right.
Am I poking you guys with enough needles that you're starting to wake up here a bit? Understand what's going on here?
Yeah, I'm writing all this down so I can go back to it. No, I'm writing. I was doing this stuff so I can go back to it.
I know. Yeah, I did try to cover a little territory here.
Yeah. No, I think I have a lot of questions on this polymer and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a nanobot. Basically,
I mean, why was it done?
What's that?
I mean, like, why was it done? Was there some kind of...
it creates a waveguide, so they can use probably around 12 megahertz. It's a waveguide. It's opaque to certain microwave bands. They can direct it without having to use HARP. And they do it from space, and then when they have little balls of it, they can hit it with a laser beam and supercavitate it. And it explodes like a thermal bomb. You can see that on NOAA. They had it off of Hawaii and Tennessee.
So then, how does that going on? How does that pair up with what's going on? Like
talking about it
and Ukraine and all this ISIS. How does that? And then we go to that. I mean, is it just a diversion? Is it?
Yeah. All of this, Flight 777, all of it is. It's a new car. It's not real. Yeah. It's real. The thing is, you're never going to know what happened. It's not going to work like that. Nobody's ever going to give a straight answer. And more than likely, there are 7 reasons why it was shot down, not 1.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is a false flag. The media today is worse than Nazi Germany was. Get a grip. Nothing being reported is true.
What I'm saying is, okay, we got that going on there. And I agree, what you're saying. And then we have this supercavitation bomb stuff. I mean, I'm trying to make all sense of all of it.
NASA came out with their document. What was this one called? The New Direction of Warfare.
Mm-hmm.
And they talk about by 2050, there will be no humans on Earth. That's pretty much in agreement with algorithms that are used on the internet right now, listening and projecting the future because of Fukushima possibly being an extinction event. That's why the Avatar program and the idea of uploading so that we're virtual is the next move toward sovereignty.
Which is ridiculous.
Well, it is and it isn't. It's with the technology that we have today is probably like Cyber City and that wrote Neuromancer, and what was the other one? Johnny Mnemonic? William Gibson. Yeah. Cyber City. There you go. That's what we're talking about. That kind of a future. Welcome to the bots, the Borgs, and humans.
But I can see intelligent machines. I can't see consciousness in machines.
Well, Turing has certain limited definitions of what self-organizing actually meant. And there are new algorithms that would suggest there are 4 mammals on Earth that are more evolved technically than men. The dolphin did sonoluminescence as an art form. Mm-hmm. Orca has a cerebral cortex that's twice the size of men, and they're firing 60% of it at any given moment. Now, there is an electrified entity that is God. Not our God necessarily, but certainly able to go places man will never be able to go because he's not designed well enough.
Yeah, now, but that Orca has a physical limitations in 3D functioning.
Well, that's in 3D. I saw nanomite blood at Area 51 that was to refix you, animate you, or reanimate you if you were blown to pieces. And so it wasn't for human. It was like the kind of thing they had in, the X-Files. I've seen nanite blood, not human blood. Where did that come from? I have no idea. Is it alien? I don't know what an alien is. I hear about all these different bases and reticulans and things like that, and I'm not sure what that means. Carl Sagan, when he talked about aliens, he said, of course, how could they not be real? but they're probably from much further away and much closer than you realize. Interdimensional. That's the way contact.
Yeah. I tend to go to dimensional.
Well, it's awareness. And man is only in 4th grade. We don't have a clue what we're doing. It's time to take responsibility for some of that. I waited for the rapture. It never came and got me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No.
Well,
you got to do the work. That's the deal. You've got to do the work.
Yeah, but on the same breath, I can't help but think in this space and time, there is a grace and a power that people can accelerate doing the work.
All the saints in history talked about the importance of meditation, going internal.
Mm-hmm.
That the church, I'm suspecting because of, putting your thoughts into water with prayer, that how important it might be just to have a little ritual around dinner grace.
Mm-hmm.
The importance of ritual is the celebration of a myth, and that has to do with intent.
Mm-hmm.
So there is something else going on here, and I think that we're not yet into the big picture.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just exploring the possibilities of what other might be out there. And what I'm doing for myself is trying to be mindful. Myself. I'm not going to try to do it for other people, but I'm certainly going to try to do it for myself. And I'm not there, obviously. I struggle.
So, if I can go back to this polymer thing.
Sure.
So they created this to make this bomb. Now, the fallout of the bomb, we'll call it analogous to radiation, is that now this stuff is in everything, and it's dehydrating things.
Yes.
So, it'd be like if you had a bunch of bombs, you'd have the radiation, which would go out and break down metabolism.
And, or, we have in our food supply with insecticides, yes, we're being assaulted on every front. And that's why you need to just say no for yourself in terms of what you're willing to participate in or not.
Yeah.
For me, I don't eat GMOs. I just simply, I try to eat as much as I can from local growers. In other words, I don't go to Safeway. I go to the farmer's market. I don't buy my beef from Safeway. I try to find a local slaughterhouse. Local, 4-H, Future Farmers of America, the drill. And that's trying to eat right. Water is the same thing. And right now, I'm going to say, like that Hopi prophecy, saying, water is going to be the first way they get you. So you need to have a game plan where you have probably 3 days of water for each in your family stashed, and have a game plan on how you're going to get more if you had to. That's a good place to start as a war plan. That's your assignment for this week.
All right. Well,
next week we'll work on something else.
What I do have at this moment is I have a stockpile of these filters, which are the ceramic filters, and I live near a river. I'm right down the street.
So you have
the river.
coliform. What's in your river? Do you have any idea how badly it is?
It is bad, but I thought...
H. pylori, coliform, what? Do you know what's in it? That's me. The first thing I'd do is find out what's actually in it, feel what you're dealing with. Some places, like where I live, you have things you don't know are in it, like, not strychnine, but you can have cyanide, because of the serpentine soils. You can find arsenic. You can find arsenic in your water if you're not careful. Some deer could commit suicide above you and kill himself and commit suicide in your stream, and it's got, all kinds of weird, creepy crawlies in it.
Well, from what I understand of these ceramic filters, they won't take out arsenic. You have to buy an additional one on there, but they go down to the molecular level, almost depending upon how small the molecule is or atoms. It does get through, but it gets rid of parasites, all the bacteria, down to bacteria level.
Right.
Right.
That's then there's the virus level, and then it gets even down further when you're 10 to the minus 9.
Yeah.
And then you go, well, that's what we're talking about, 10 to the minus 9, 10 to the minus 10 meters.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about real small. Bacteria is 10 to the minus 6. This what they use, this polymer producing bacteria. I have a Latin genus species. I'll upload my paper on structured water. That ought to blow you away. And let me say, this one is such a small bacteria, it's 10 to the minus 9. And so it's like a little nanobot bacteria that creates polymer. And it produces a basic structure that, when dispelled out of aircraft at certain altitudes with barium oxide, will desiccate the atmosphere and form artificial clouds for waveguides. And the bottom line is that it's messing with our weather everywhere. And the collateral damage is, it's unmeasurable. Like cell phones. We haven't even talked about microwave radiation and how much your body is being exposed to today compared to 10 years ago, before the uses of texting and cell phones like they are today. 10 times exposure is like Fukushima. It's different radiation bands, but they all have LD50 ratios and dosimetry. So there it is. You know, and it's across the board. The air you breathe and the water you drink, the food you eat, and the thoughts you choose to entertain. It's all on levels of awareness. And you have to take responsibility at all levels of the hologram. That's how you become aware. It's not an easy path either, let me tell you, man. It's like you never really get there because you discover another layer of the onion, if you will. Simon says you can go halfway to the door. And right now, the geoengineering is terrible. It's not as bad as Fukushima, though. Fukushima is still number one.
I mean, I accept all the personal responsibility and all this stuff and the growing and all that, but I also, and I'm not depending on this because I have to do what I got to do, but I also think that at some point, rather than let this thing turn into a toxic waste dump for eons to come, that there would be intervention at some point. I mean, because let's face it, if we were really awake and aware and accepting these things or wanting these things, that's one thing. But there's a large part of this planet who is being mind controlled and duped and knocked down.
So I would start with the switch on your nuclear power plants. I would say to your local county commissioner, that's where you start, grassroots. And you start a program where you want the switch turned off, that some other form of alternative power is offered. What are they doing up in your area? Fracking. Oh, man. You're in a world of hurt up there, by the way. It's crazy. You know, it isn't. I would close down those radiation plants. You know, they talk about the fish coming into San Francisco that glows in the dark. And they try to blame it on Fukushima. And just as easily, it could be Hanford leaking into the Columbia River.
In fact, I have a guy talking about that the reason why they're bringing up this stuff and blaming Fukushima is it takes the suspicion off.
It's everywhere.
Local, yeah.
All of the nuclear reactors. Matt Stein, my partner, has written a very interesting paper called 400 Chernobyl.
Yeah. In fact, I had him on a few weeks ago. He went through that. I put that up as a YouTube as well.
Yeah. Matt is, what does that bring to mind? You know, get a grip. It's crazy. And if we think we've already had a nuclear power plant explode as a nuclear explosion, and the world hasn't been told, and all that particulate went up into the stratosphere and is currently falling down in Chicago. How's that feel? When you get RADCON 3 level alerts and nobody's telling you why. Is it dangerous? That's the part, again, I don't know. I know it wouldn't be very good for a child.
Yeah, it's not good. That I could say probably pretty good.
And thyroid is right now the leading illness in prescriptions. If you go to the pharmacy, the doctor will tell you it's oxycodone and the thyroid medicines, the primary.
All right, well, hold on there. We'll take this last break. I've been sucking up a lot of iodine now for weeks. hold on. We'll take a break, and we'll continue back as we talk with Rich and Alan Miller, who is talking about some pretty scary stuff. But it's always solution-oriented, though, which is what I like.
Make sure you stay tuned, because you're listening to Feet to the Fire.
We're talking with Richard Alan Miller, and, you put it very starkly, and it really, I don't know, it just underscores the almost futility of being here. I don't know, I have to do what I got to do for me and those around me, as I take care of myself and grow, that emanates out. I could see it with Lucinda and how she's been growing leaps and bounds. I could see this stuff, and that's all I can do. All I can do is what I can do in the area around me. I can't take upon me the weight of the world, because I'll just collapse. And I'm not saying that you are saying I should take the weight of the world on me, but I'm saying, you have your mic on?
Oh, yes,
yeah.
I do.
Okay, there we go.
Thank you.
I'm now putting up this picture of the map of consciousness. I'm kind of get that in the.
Oh yeah, I thought you'd like that. Just a couple of things. I have that one for the half empty, half full, and full of. Oh, I got a picture on that somewhere too. So, part of my writing's trying to get the concept across so that you can get it in your mind's eye. Once you've got it there, you've got it. The physics changes. I don't know any law in physics that's lasted longer than 20 years. Basically, it isn't the law of physics that makes it real. It's your imagination. And the math part, the rest of it like that, that's me finding the allegory and corollary in the universe, trying to be able to use that concept to predict what's going to happen next. Good luck with that.
But isn't it possible that a person or persons who have developed the techniques, like we were talking about, like I slow down the time, whatever. Isn't it possible that there could be people or persons who are able to literally say no to what's going on?
Yeah, Navy SEALs did. That's what we trained them for. And astronauts, some of the astronauts went through our program. They took these protocols and took them to heart, and now have integrated them to the point where, what do you think? A super soldier is someone that's extremely aware and is not a robot.
Well, a lot of the ones I've run into are really messed up.
Yeah.
They almost seem to hurt.
I was messed up last week after I got raped, with my hacks where they physically came in my home and ripped off things on my computer. That, wrecked me. That wrecked me. That had an effect on me.
Because
then I found out it didn't happen just to me. It happened to a whole bunch of my friends, all simultaneously. It happened a couple of weeks ago. It was really creepy. It's only now that I'm just starting to put it back together.
If you ask me, again, I always flirt with, the delusion aspects of what I come up with. But if you ask me, it seems like that's the future holds this downward slide in what we're talking about. There's no question about that. But something is going to happen in that point. Now, I'm not talking about the rapture, okay? I'm talking about an interjection of higher consciousness, maybe through people, but something is going to stop this train wreck. I don't. It's not that I want to sit back and wait for that to happen. I got to be part of it in my little part, but I can't accept it.
Yeah, Joseph Campbell said it best when he said that when you see the kingdom of the Father on earth, the apocalypse has already occurred. It is perpetual in its potential. Now, what that means is, since recorded history, apocalypse has been part of man's collective unconscious. Started with Ezekiel's vision and right on up to Nostradamus, and you know the names. Mm-hmm. So with that said, what does this all mean? It means that we have an opportunity. How did they put it in War of the Worlds? where Klaatu is talking to the scientist, and he said that when man's at his very worst, he's also is at his very best. When we're challenged, we rise to the occasion. This is and can be seen as an opportunity, not a bad thing or a good thing. You could say everything happens for a reason. Everything leads to something better. And now you have an opportunity to make it so, as Captain Picard would say. Make it so.
Mm-hmm.
It's not hard to do. Just do it.
I guess the it part is what we all have to figure out.
Well, that's going to vary for each of us. We're all different. We all have different ifs. Our purpose.
Because I've written letters to Congress in my district, and I've said things like
"One in the wind."
Yeah, right, really. I did it more of for the tally. I call it for the tally books. So that you just sit down and do nothing. What have you done? Well, I've done this. I've done that. I made an effort so that when the ones who didn't get the letter or ignored the letter, say, well, why didn't you say something? I did. It's called comfort, but everyone's got to be responsible for their actions. So I took these steps along the way.
That's an excellent story. You should be very proud of yourself and continue to give yourself those strokes of encouragement. That's how you do it. One step at a time.
And I don't know if there'll be a critical mass of people doing that. See.
Well, it's waking up. That's what's happening right now with your radio station. People are listening to me. They're getting it. They're getting another portion of it, just like you got another portion on geoengineering.
Mm-hmm.
You have a sense of it now. And the fact that, people, I was at this restaurant, and the guy's looking up at the sky at this jet laying down a chemtrail. And I said, that's not a contrail. And he said, no, that's a chemtrail. And I said, they're toxic. And he looked back up there, and he said, no, that's water vapor. Now, what happened right then?
Wow.
What happened was he knew it wasn't water vapor, but had to go into denial, because if he were to acknowledge that it was toxic, he would have to then do something about it. And that's where the three words that I've heard about Americans, this is an important thing to say here. The three words equated to America right now are ill-informed, ignorant, and complacent. However, even with that said, Germany, which is 10 years, 20 years ahead of us in the uses of herbs, like if you used an alternative medicine, Germany is going to use 10 times that. And yet, they're all watching America right now to see what you guys are going to do. Because, frankly, there doesn't seem to be much way out of this paper bag. I'm doing a thing with Kids Say the Darndest Things. I'm working radio with Vincent Finelli, where we do these kids that ask us questions like, if pigs are so smart, how come parrots can talk and pigs can't? I love little minds like this. It's wonderful. I mean, they're creatively bright. And the way I responded to that, his name was Gunner. He's a hunter in Oklahoma. I said, well, bird brain comes to mind. And when a pig is upset and wants something done, it knows how to communicate that real easily. The kid got it. The idea of nonverbal communication isn't about words. It's actions. And that's where the personal responsibility comes in as you start walking your talk. Good luck with them. And that's how you do it, just like you're doing radio and I'm here talking on it.
Well, one of the reasons why I want to do this is to be able to have time and space for someone to actually say something instead of the little sound bites they give you with a million commercials. In fact, I only play the commercials. I mean, first off, all these commercials that I play, I use these top. I just love them. I love the stuff.
Yeah, that Shambhala and that woman singing, boy, they were worth it.
What's that?
The Shambhala song and that woman singer, they were absolutely worth it.
Yeah. So
No.
I do have these commercials, but I want to have none. I'm going to wipe myself of them, but I do want a section of things that I do believe in and want to share. But I'm not doing anything. I'm not commercially motivated. So I mean that should be obvious by everybody that this is not the point. The
With
point.
your gray hair, an old hippie with his motorcycles.
Yeah. I mentioned on Facebook. I found some pictures, and then I put it up with the show. And I said I was talking about the motorcycle last week, and so I put it up there. And somebody wrote on there that had an objection to it because any kind of an explosion-based propulsion is harmful, and he wants to wait for a not perpetual motion, but like a clean.
Yeah.
I go, I want that too. Okay, I mean, I'm not, it's not like
Tell him that his body. Isn't it interesting? In Tapejia ritual, you're actually being consumed by fire. You're on fire, literally, with all neurotransmitters firing in your body. You're basically consuming yourself in a big flame. That's one way of looking at what's going on. There's his implosion engine.
Yeah.
Well, the human body, it isn't. Yeah.
It is burning, burning
That's
things.
correct.
Yeah.
Fuel.
But I do agree that I'd like to move to something else. But I mean, in the meantime, and what?
Yeah.
I mean, this is like an art form. I hate keep coming back to this because this is it's not as important as the other stuff you're talking about, but it's like there's an artness to it. I mean, when I read the book Zen and Art of Marco's Maintenance and the Lisa, the sequence, I understood that there's a creative quality. When man creates something with quality, God has created something with quality through the man, limitations. You can see stuff of quality. Why are some of these master arts quality? Well, some of it could be because people have arbitrarily made the stuff worth a lot. But there are certain people who do things you can see there's a quality in there, and it's like God peeking through matter coming at you. And that's how I look at. That's why I kind of look at this bike.
You should consider yourself blessed to be able to even know that you do that. That's in itself nice going. It's something to be proud of, actually, to be able to see and witness that presence.
Well,
anyway, I don't know where to go with all of this other than to say that what needs to happen now is that each of us needs to determine what is important and start pursuing that part right now. This is the last hour.
Yeah,
this is the hour.
The hour.
Not the 11th hour. It's the hour.
And with that being said, that is kind of my point, that this is the hour and then something. We're not looking at just dissipating into a slavery thing and disappearing in pollution. There's something coming. I mean, I think people instinctively know it. Some are running away from it. Some are denying it. It's like when I was at a company and went out of business, right? The end was looming, all right? The company saw that they're not going to be able to pay their bills to a point where, and they just kept pushing it forward a quarter. What can we do to get to the next quarter, to the next quarter? And I'm like, it's going to blow up. And the longer you wait, the bigger it'll blow up. So let's deal with it. Well, the company went out of business. It blew up, And so that's what I'm looking at now, is that something is coming, and we can't push it off because it's going to be here.
Well, the movie that comes to mind is the title, There Will Be Blood. There will be collateral damage. I wouldn't want to live in a city when the grid goes down, just from the vigilante craziness, not even talking about the real-time problems. There is a very good video called After Armageddon. It's absolutely a decent PBS 2-hour series on asking experts what's going to happen in the first hour, the first day, the first week, and the first year. It's an interesting book. This one is based on a pandemic like Ebola. I gave you the Ebola white paper, just thought you'd like that. Ebola turns out to be a type of super scurvy, vitamin C. if that's what it does. That's how it kills you, is it strips the body of vitamin C. And that means that chelation and intravenous vitamin C is an absolute cure. You know what the best cure is for Ebola? Good nutrition.
Go figure.
No,
right?
no, it's been documented.
Yeah,
I've got it in the paper there.
I'm laughing
That's what it's all about.
From my own personal searching, that seems to be the answer for a lot of things.
Well, that's it. Your food choices, the choices you make emotionally. When you talk about internal landscape, the emotional or EQ part of IQ, you're now setting in another layer of relationships in the way you structure the water that's inside your organs. And let me tell you, that's where health starts. And so if you want to talk about placebo, I would say that placebo is possibly 9/10 of everything. What you think is happening is what literally will happen.
You know, that's a tremendous thing here. It's just another explosion, is that you program your own water.
That's right.
With
That's
intention.
Exactly correct. And your anger and fighting and not flowing is what makes the distinction between health and illness. And really, in psychology, in Jungian imaginal psychology, they would say that an illness is created by the higher self as a way to communicate the consciousness, and that once consciousness gets the message, there's no need for the illness anymore. Most people are killed and have cancer because of anger.
Mm.
That's how it works.
Which, of course, is why we're kept in fear, which was a passive...
keeping, remove the bay leaf. The stew.
I mean, wouldn't you look at fear as almost like a passive-aggressive anger? Or
it's done intentionally as a type of controlling the masses, the individuals. That's it, yes.
Well, I like this. I have it on my desktop, and I refer to it. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. That's from Dune.
Yeah, I remember when my Sifu used to have me walk on a fence, and I wasn't as afraid as I walked on a wire up 100 feet up. And it was the same balance. There was no difference. And yet it was my thought that created the possibility. That's what the logic brain does. And why you don't want to use your upper brain, because your upper brain is there to make all your beliefs true, including getting shot if that's a possibility. That's how it works.
Well, you know what? One of the things I'm going away from this conversation with is the dream I had about that door ripping off is very important. It's very important, and I have to ponder that. And I'm still not convinced, though, with the Indian. So, but I do think there's something going on, and I have to. You know what? The thing that amazed me most about Jesus, the human being, was that here's this human being. He figures out he has this huge connection, right? And he accepts that. I mean, can you accept someone come up to you and saying, like, yeah, you're the Christ, I'm the Messiah? Yeah, I'm the Messiah. I couldn't, I mean, how could someone just accept that? But he had enough internal evidence, I guess, along with it to accept whatever being he was, and I'm still amazed at that. And if I come into some kind of responsible power of interjection into this, I hope I accept it and I can see it and not are scared by it or not think it's a delusion. I see people who are delusionally powerful, and I go like, I don't want to go there.
Well, that's the second enemy of man was power.
Yeah,
once you overcome your fear, then you have personal power.
Yeah, well,
the problem is that corrupts you. And then what you have to do is step back and try to see things more clearly, like you're doing right now. And Castaneda or Don Juan would have suggested that clarity and seeing things clearly will at some point also become a limitation. And then, of course, by the time you get that lesson, you're too old to do anything about it.
Well, then I would imagine then you're ready to move on. I mean, there is a time frame here.
Now we're getting the big picture.
Yeah. You know, we are here for a reason and a time. I mean, it's designed that way to have, and that's why I'm thinking there's an end to this world. You know, by design, it doesn't go forever. I mean, the eternal aspects of it go forever, but the material ones don't. It's always constantly growing. I mean, if Earth is a live being, I think it is, and we're experiencing a certain dimensional alley of the live being, eventually it's going to move on to something else too. So it's not going to be here forever.
Well, the Earth is, in fact, Gaia, as a quantum computation algorithm, the mycorrhiza in the Earth is actually self-organizing and aware, alive. That's that mother tree that I talked about in BC. That woman's study where she shows how that one tree sets up a communication with all the trees in the forest to warn when there's a fire or other kinds of things going through the forest.
Mm-hmm.
It's a habitat, and there's a way of communicating just like your body does.
Well, as inevitable, the night is coming to an end. We have a couple of minutes. I mean, do you want to take a minute here or so to kind of, I don't know if you want to sum up or say something or...
No, basically, I'm a starving artist. Feel free to support me by reading my books, not just buying them, but reading them, because my hope is that they stimulate some of you to write your own book, like you're talking of doing. Leave footprints.
Leave footprints.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny how you could do that. You're talking, and all of a sudden, at the end, you just throw this thing, which is like, it's like a boom. You know, it's not an explosion, but it's like this. It's under the wire. It's like under the consciousness or whatever. It's like, I don't know how to explain it, but I appreciate the time and things you've done and shared. All I could do is say I appreciate it, and I take it to heart, and I will. I
like you too, James. Appreciate what you're trying to do. No, really, I do.
And I will.
I want to go on a ride on that Indian when you get it.
Yeah.
If you ever bring it out here to the West Coast,
I would like that. I would like that. I would like that. I mean, actually, to me, that's motivation to get it.
Better than Sturgis, trust me.
You know, I never will be anywhere near there.
We'll call it Redwood Highway Part 2.
Alrighty, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. It's richardallenmiller.com and oak-publishing.com for his books. It's been great. We'll talk again.
Absolutely.
Alrighty.
Thank you for having me, by the way. Always a pleasure, yeah.
Thank you for being here. Well,
yeah, I'm going to bed now. I'm an old man. Good night.
Good night. All right. There we go. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to say anything. I just want to just kind of bask in the glow of the conversation. And I will be putting this up YouTube in a certain amount of time. He liked that. He leaves this thing. Did I mention Hollywood? No, but I guess that's for next time. So, Richard L. Miller. That's great. All right. Actually, I have nothing to say other than reach for the skies within. Feet to the Fire will be back again next week, live.
My old friend, the one who Feet to Fire is a production of IPS Media Works on the ONSIG radio network of stations.